everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this is 941 episodes. And in this episode, we discuss about different innovations, technology, transhumanism concept, AI, and modern things. And we have our world famous speakers, Madam Sylvia from Europe. We have Mr. Professor David Smith, and we have Mr. Daniel. I just want to share about Madam Sylvia. She is very unique. She is like a climate change activist. You know, World Talent Economy Forums actually working in the emerging economy for solving climate change. Most importantly, she has very good students, and World Talent Economy Forum love to support her projects. And definitely, if she need any support from around the world, we are seeking support for his project. For her projects, we will discuss about startup and smarter farmer. But I think Sylvia can share her view about climate change and her solutions, and hopefully it will be very, very, very interesting project for all of us. Madam Sylvia.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm very thrilled to be on this call and yes, just to share some views and have a wonderful discussion with everyone. Happy to share about the topics that Sharif has just mentioned. So, of course, just to give you a short introduction about my activities. So, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Clear CO2. Clear CO2 is on a mission to heal the broken food system. We're doing this by decarbonizing the whole food supply chain. And we want to basically support all companies who want to go green and don't know how to by creating certifications, which are at the same time coming with checklists about what they could do to reduce their carbon emissions. So when they do that, the good news is that we can also provide them with money, with funding, because when companies reduce their carbon emissions, and that we can trace everything, have really a clear view about what has been done. And this is also auditable and certifiable. The certificates can then be traded on the carbon market. And the carbon market is where companies who emit too much carbon can buy and compensate their emissions by buying carbon certificates from companies or organizations who emit less. Just to give you an example, because I know it's a complex topic. Usually, when you take a flight, for instance, you often have the possibility to compensate your emissions when you fly with buying, let's say, planting trees. So certificates to compensate your carbon emissions, and instead, let's say, as an alternative to planting trees, you have the possibility to help other companies reduce their carbon emissions. In the end, everybody reduces emissions in the atmosphere, and it's good for the environment, and it's good for people. I mean, I'll be short and give you one more example. Right now we are piloting our certification for food waste, avoiding food waste going to landfill and being distributed to feed people. Yes. So for instance, you might know some food banks which are exactly collecting some food surplus at supermarkets or at some farmers, for instance. And when those foods are being collected, instead of going to landfill and feeding people in this case, it has a double effect. So going to landfill means that the food would become methane, produce methane. And methane is a highly, let's say, polluting greenhouse gas. 25 to also now it's changing even to 80 times more, let's say, greenhouse gas creating than CO2. And in this case, if we can prevent the food to go to the landfill, we can certify the difference, what has been saved as carbon emissions. And in this case, that which has been saved and can be certified can be also sold. All right. So that's one thing. And of course, the second thing is that it helps to feed people. Yeah, so it has a double benefit, and feeding people right now in times of crisis is a highly important thing. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we want to support our peers and people who are in need right now, and that's why the food bank has such a crucial role to play, and we want to support that through the mechanism of funding and rewarding through carbon credits. So that's basically how it works. Yeah. And my background is more in business, in marketing, global marketing. And I've, for let's say the past 12, 13 years, I've been dedicating myself to traceability of food information. So a lot of data, software development. That's basically where I come from. And of course, entrepreneurship. So this is, I'd say, my fourth or fifth startup that I'm working with. Yeah. So yes. So already back in 2005, one of my first startup, which I co-founded, had won the prize of the best e-commerce website in Austria already in 2005, for instance. Yeah, that's in a nutshell. It was
Thank
a
you,
bit of a
Mr.
long
David Smith.
introduction.
What you want to discuss about today's topic?
Well, Sharif, thank you so much. The topic of the startups and smarter farming and agriculture is a very interesting one because uh, the advent of the spread of digitalization and ubiquitous communications has really not left the whole farming agricultural business by itself, and one where we're seeing many, many advances of technologies there. And because it is an area that is experienced significant growth in the use of technology, there are significant opportunities there for startups and significant opportunities there for innovation, both on a global basis and also on regional basis, because much of the agriculture and smart farming is driven by the local ecosystem and the local environmental considerations as well. So, we've seen many places where uh, smart technology has really gone from using GPS to robotics to taking advantage of the full suite of the geospatial assets to manage the farming environment, and even doing things like remote sensing what's happening, using the Internet of Things type of sensors and embedding them in field to understand things like what's the moisture level, how things are changing, uh, and the science around looking at how to optimize the seeds, the agricultural crops and things for each of the regions is really a dynamic area where technology is being used. One of the things that I love about looking at the startup and the smart farming environment is that it's one where you can start small, and or you could be a large corporation applying this across thousands and thousands of acres and distributed agricultural centers across regions, nations, or multi-nations as well. Also, the other area of a smart farmer's is not just how do you prepare the soil, plant the soil, grow the product, harvest the product, but we're seeing more and more of the smart agriculture, the smart farming being used more to going all the way to market. So it's the agriculture concern, the farmer's family, understanding the logistics of distribution, understanding the logistics of market pricing, and how that is playing. The other place I'm seeing tremendous opportunity for startups in smart farming is how to begin to use it in a environmental sustainable area. Now, we have talked in the past about some of the areas where we're seeing energy production using biomass. And some of the byproducts of some of the particular types of biomass generation is one of the products is fertilizer that can be used to enhance crop production. Another byproduct of biomass plants is you have a market for the farmers to do with the leftover from their crops. So let's say it's corn and you extract the corn from the field. The leftover corn plants, as you can harvest them, can actually be sold and put into the biomass plant as part of how they generate the biomass to generate heat and to generate the other byproducts. The same with looking at cows and others like that. Some of the cows' byproducts can be circulated into the biomass plants to produce other outputs that can be circled back into the farm to complete a more of a closed loop development of supporting the growth of the crops and things without having to buy chemical-based fertilizer, for example, and can be used to enrich the soil in many other ways. And also create a business model for the people who are in the family who are not actively engaged in the field. So you might have in some of the small farms like we've seen in places like in Haiti and Dominican Republic, part of Africa, part of Europe, where the men in the family might be farming in the field and the women in the family might be running the biomass business, might run the logistics for the operation because they're all digitally connected and can do that. So you involve more and create a greater financial sustainability for the family going forward. So Sharif, I think that's probably my initial ones, but this is an area where technology, advances in processes, the whole fact that the world has become much more digital and much more connected and much more precise has really contributed to advances and where there's a lot of opportunity for innovation and startups.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel, what you want to discuss for today's session?
Well, I'm a big advocate of what's known as permaculture, which is a portmanteau of the words permanent and agriculture. And it is actually a design system that emphasizes whole systems thinking and multi-layer thinking. In other words, there are 7 layers of agriculture that go from below the ground, below to the canopy. And if you these things as perennials, these different layers, you can actually create a whole integrated landscape that requires very little maintenance. You can perennials that will regrow every year instead of annuals that have to be replanted. So it's a really amazing design system, and there are practitioners worldwide. You can get a permaculture design certificate by taking an 8-hour class from another permaculture certified designer, and it's something that's really neglected in terms of integrating humans with the environment and the food production system. So I've got kind of recovering from a sore throat, so I'm in a good word for short and sweet there. It's a lot of resources online to check out. Thanks.
Sharif, you're muted. Sharif, you're muted. There you go.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you? Yeah. Yeah, Madam Sylvia, AI is most important part for smart farming. So, what you want to discuss about AI, how AI can be implemented in the smart farming procedure, and we are from emerging economy, so how it will be helpful for emerging economy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind immediately are some couple of cases with AI. like, I mean, recently what I've seen, what we're interested in are more, for instance, grading food quality. Yeah, I mean, you can do that. There are some startups doing that. Also, for instance, recognizing the quality of food, so be able just to know when it can turn to waste, when is the right time to harvest. Yeah, so this reduces food waste also. Yeah. So they are, of course, it's using image recognition and some AI algorithms behind. I mean, there's a lot of AI being used also. I mean, the typical use case for smart farming is, of course, being able to better monitor let's say, the meteorological information to be able to know when to seed better, when to harvest also. So there's a lot of information around the field. There's also AI about how to seed or use fertilizers on the field, for instance, yeah, just to know how to do it, so then you can reduce the material you use. Or what else do I see right now with a lot of AI is, for instance, still with image recognition, it's also another use case I've seen is recognition of pests. Yeah, so just to be able to know what to do with it, yeah, afterwards. So yeah, that's a lot of treatment that can help smarter farming, and usually the information is also available remote, yes, for diagnostics. So I think it's a lot of intelligence that now can come into the pocket of a farmer to do better decisions, improve the investments, reduce the use of pesticides or fertilizers, for instance, yeah, which are also quite heavy on the environment. So of course, that's something, just like more productivity or improvement of how farming is being done. That's basically what I see as a smart farming opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. David Smith.
Well, Sharif, thank you. Some of the questions over in the comments are really good. Is that, Jason had mentioned that some of the vertical farming companies are having a hard time recently, and part of that is because of the fact that where they're located and the cost of energy, and the fact that many of them require a lot of energy and resources to be brought into an internal environment. And the business model for that is still working out. There's some good advantages, but it's the early stage of optimizing the technology and the processes in there. And you're seeing, as Jason mentioned in some of the comments, places where even some of the drone technology using image recognition and using precise GPS and others are being used for, he mentions, for harvesting, but it's being used in many other places too. And particularly in farms where you're having animals, with keeping track of animals, others using it to help gauge visually for the farmer what's happening in the field, because being able to go up over the field and getting a visual recognition and integrating that with the Internet of Things sensors can be a tremendous advantage for the farmer. Because when you look at what needs to happen, the projection is that the world will have a population of around 9.6 billion by 2050. And to be able to support that type of population, there needs to be about a 70% increase in global agriculture production between now and 2050, when that's projected. And you're needing to see ways to increase it, to optimize it, but yet do it in ways that can be sustainable, that can protect the environment, that understands that a lot of the soil is being over-farmed today, and the nutrients and other things are being outlined. And so how can you use today's technology, from satellites to drones to sensors to computer models to Internet of Things, to take farming that we need today into the next revolution. Because if you go back into the early parts of the last century, an acre could feed about 25 people. In the middle of the last century, in the 50s and 60s and early 70s, an acre could feed about 150 people. With precision agriculture going up over the early parts of this century and the end of last century, you saw that an acre could feed around 260 people per acre. So we've seen it going up, but it needs to go up in some more dramatic ways. And it needs to go with less of a dependency on humans doing the work and more of a dependency on more tools, more robotics, more areas being incorporated into it. So this type of smart farming really incorporates information communications technology, not just in the field, but into the machinery, the equipment. It's using things such as cloud computing, more robotics, a tremendous amount of more artificial intelligence applied. We've seen for over a decade farmers using smartphones and tablets to access everything about the conditions in their field, to include their day-to-day operations, things like soil, what's the weather going to be, what type of resources are they using, uh, details on changes for plants and how it can be used. And if you look, agricultural technology has evolved tremendously from the days when you used to use stones to help plant a field, to using wood and steel and others as we've gone forward. And, all of those were mechanical based, engineering based ways of farming. But today we've seen a lot more intelligence now brought to it, and a lot more way of using other systems to make the farming work. And one of the reasons it's called smart farming is it's really possible due to the sensors that are connected to the network, the sensors that are connected to the machinery, then its connection using AI and other technologies into the vast amount of information that's available across the internet and with models and others. So, what are some of the things that the sensors can do? They can understand the temperature, the humidity. They can understand the hydration of the soil, how much light, how are the other things going. And you need to see ways to mitigate some of the challenges you have in it, because it's not just an advanced technique for the advanced farmers or the corporate farmers. It's really a necessary way to optimize and to preserve both human and natural resources. I can just look around myself here in Texas, which Texas has a large agricultural operation, and farm labor is becoming increasingly scarce due to the fact that the cities and the urban areas, you have immigration. Most of the farmers I know across the state are an aging population, and climate change is really altering growing conditions tremendously in ways that are hard to predict, in ways that you need to use some of the advanced techniques. And we see that the biodiversity of our crops and things are really diminishing. And you're having to see more of the AI tools brought to bear, more of the sensing, more of the tools. And some of the AI tools that we're seeing used include things like machine learning, as was mentioned in the questions, image recognition systems of all different types, real-time analytics, all types of sensors, embedded sensors. You're seeing wireless networks and wireless sensor networks being deployed across the field. You're seeing a lot of automation, and where you're doing things tremendously, you're seeing all these tied in with things like weather forecasting, sensor-based precision agriculture, crop yield optimization, soil health monitoring. How can I manage livestock in a diverse area with taking better use of the resources we have for them? How can I improve the quality of what we're producing? How can I do weed control? How can I do other things to increase my crop sustainability? But also, how can I do it to remove human error and to optimize what it's doing? Uh, and how can I do it in real time? The world is changing in agriculture as well as a lot of the rest of the world, where we're moving increasingly to real time. And the fact that everything's increasingly digitized, and the fact that everything to increasingly is communicating all the time, has made this type of advances very possible. And it includes with things like disease detection prevention. But as in many things in this digital world, it does come with its challenges, and a lot of those challenges are based around security. You know, how can you protect your digital access? How can you protect your Internet of Things security, your data, your cloud platform? The fact that you're putting computer resources and computer sensors and others into the field where they can be stolen and sold for others are all part of that security um, operations that need to be taken into account in smart farming today, in smart agriculture. And we need to begin to do it with that. And, you know, we need to make some large jumps still in some of the AI systems, some of the way we apply things. And Sharif, that's where the startup part of your topic today really comes into play very well. And it's also a place where there could be considerable collaboration between the research universities and colleges, between the corporations, between the government regulatory activities, and between both the seasoned older farmers who know it, plus the younger ones who understand more of the technology, and that collaboration of a startup environment to be able to do that and to move forward in a way to uh, get the increases in production and sustainability that's needed is very important in this area, Sharif, of smart farming, smart agriculture in the startup community. So, you know, I think we need to make, as Jason says in the chat, another big jump right now, and I agree with him. But that, again, is my next set of comments.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel, and thank you, Mr. Eric, for joining today's session. Mr. Daniel.
Well, for the startup person, I think it helps to not start too big and then go broke and then you've messed yourself up. But there are pretty low kinds of things you can do to increase food security or even make money or even growing things. I like a couple things. Microgreens are a great way to get into growing healthy food at home. When you plant these broccoli, grow them in about 10 days. They actually have like 50 times the nutrient value of regular vegetable broccoli. True of most that they're very concentrated with it's at their first initial stages of growing, because the seed actually everything that the plant needs to survive first a couple of weeks or so. So that's one thing. Usually there's a farm. Usually at a weekly farmers market to check out. In fact, that's where I'm getting my microgreens. I go to the local one here in Thousand here, and not only does he sell the live seeds, but you can the live flats of greens, but you can buy seeds also. So another thing is to see if discount program at my farmers market. If you're on what's called SNAP, it used to be called food stamps, you actually get match of the and you get some wooden tokens that are good for produce or greens. or even food plant. You can buy grapes and fig grapes, and those are available. No, you can buy those with the U.S. Food stamp SNAP tokens or SNAP. But that's something I'm trying to raise awareness on, because we could increase food security that way and get people eating healthier, because people on the government food aid tend to buy a lot of junk food instead of healthy food. So that's something that's good to raise awareness on. Another thing is what's called vermicomposting. It's the little red wiggler earthworms that eat toast or your kitchen stew, and they're very rare in themselves. They're worth about a nickel a piece, some for bait or to start their own worm bins. But they also create a very rich product when they digest the food. The worm castings they leave behind are something that sells in gardening stores for maybe like $10 a pound, and it's a thing that regenerates. The worms themselves double their population 30 days. So it's kind of an exponential growth thing. They don't need light; they just need water and inputs of food waste. So in a short amount of time, you can grow the equivalent of a cattle. Actually, if you look at the little worms being pound for pound or pound for dollar, they're worth their weight in like a cow, and they're similarly constituted with protein. If you chose to make tubers, which I don't know if people do that, but you would need to actually clear their digestive tract. You would them without doing that first. Another thing that doesn't our energy inputs so much is mushrooms. They can be grown in just a moist moya, and gourmet mushrooms are similarly worth $10 a pound and up at farmers markets and smart restaurants that want them, and there's 1,000 different varieties of mushrooms. So for the startup farm, microgreens, worm farming, and mushroom growing would be great ways to get your feet together, so to speak, without risking the bank on a big project. So I'm going to give my voice a rest, but it's a great topic, and the U.S. Transhumanist Party that I'm going to be on the vice president ticket for has a lot of support in this area and a lot of ideas. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
So two challenges in there. I mean, getting resources and partnerships are one, and the other one is marketing, because even when you come up with something new, it's hard. I know a company that came up with a soil, but getting people to use that and getting companies to carry it. How do you get this new idea into home, for example, is really challenging. The people that have succeeded in that have taken kind of we'll say an organic approach of really finding passionate people about what they do and finding the right conversation. And so that's really difficult, because you may have a basic area like gardening, but to find the right conversation that the gardeners want can be really tough. But once you find it, you'll do a post and you'll get hundreds of responses back with a single post that people are so excited about it. So that's one area that's really challenging, is how you get market to who, and how do you find the right conversation for those people to be in. The other part in starting is there's lots of people you can talk to that are really trying to work it. There's local government leaders, even mayors, and local businesses that do that. One area that's really tough right now, for example, is autonomous vehicles for farming. Not really profitable at the moment, even the ones they have, even though they're trying stuff. It's how do you get that cost effective? Soils and add it, things you add is a big area. Vertical stacking is a big area. You know, how do you grow things differently and efficiently do that? There's also some interesting ideas in terms of collaboration. For example, there's a case where a power plant has excess heat, which feeds into water, which grows fish, which has growing in it. So it turns out that the power plant, the fish, and the agriculture are all adding some benefits to each other. So some new collaborations is one thing. So I guess think about marketing, think about partnering with businesses. There's also a lot of groups I know that have experimental places that are finding things. There's some weird approaches, actually, in terms of crowdfunding. For example, I don't know if you still can, you could go buy part of an olive farm by the square foot. And if you bought part of that olive farm, they had automated almost everything. So you could watch in camera the farm work, and you got paid based on how many square foot of this olive farm you had. And interesting funding approaches to where, you know, you got a piece of that profits in there. So I guess there's some ideas of innovative collaborations, and marketing are some interesting things.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Eric. Now I request Madam Sylvia, right now, a lot of startup actually developing, how we innovate more startup for solving farming or for your food securities. And what's your advice for emerging economy?
Sorry, did I understand well? It's about how to develop more startups, or where could
Yes,
startups
exactly.
develop more? Okay. All
We want to
right.
develop more in emerging economy where 54% global population, like South Asia, like Africa, like South America, these are our potential area.
Yes. I think even before, of course, there are a lot of opportunities with smart farming, as we've been discussing so far, yeah. But definitely there is something that needs to go also low tech, yeah. So that was good that we had also some comments on permaculture. What I see in emerging economies is that food waste is a big topic, because 30% of the food waste happens on the field, where it's the contrary in, let's say, more industrialized countries, where the 30% happens at the consumer level. I guess we have less of a problem of producing more if we waste less. And wasting, let's say, in Africa or in the south of Asia, is mostly due to bad storage facilities or lack of transport, for instance, to be able to distribute the food. So it's as simple as that. We don't need to go very high, highly towards technology. It's really as simple as that, having the proper storage, as discussed here, yeah, or having the right distribution, like Eric was mentioning before, yeah. We speak of farmers markets or also platforms here in let's say more in industrialized countries, but in emerging markets, it's really putting up let's say the logistics, but also the trusted ways. I think that's where startups can really support. I've seen a couple of startups creating more, let's say, trusted ways of getting the farmers paid. So there is more trust in the logistic chain, that they are sure that the food is being, brought to market, and also that they get a fair share out of that. So I think, those solutions are often based on blockchain, for instance. Yeah. So, there are also some innovations on that, and there are also very more simple solutions, even with SMS, or, it doesn't have to be very high tech. I think that sometimes if we like technology, we like to think in more complicating things. But as mentioned before, permaculture is also a way of using less pesticides, yeah, by planning, by designing, in a proper way, combining cooperation. It was one of the topics. There are a lot of synergies. And even for, let's say, some countries that are maybe more in the southern hemisphere, I've seen, for instance, developing other types of proteins, let's say, for instance, like algae with spirulina. It can be also grown in let's say sunny places, and better grown with use of technology, software, and sensing, and that can be also created together. I mean, with the part of the feeding, as said, it could be also an industry besides having some waste that also go in it. Yes. So that's what I see about what to tackle. So as I said, food waste is a big topic. I mean, sometimes we don't need to go very high tech. We need to think of the basics first. And for that, the good news, as I said before, all the activities that can reduce food waste or reduce use of energy, reduce use of material, if we can certify it, then basically there's a way to be able to reward and finance these transitions. And funding is a topic. It's not only going to market, but finding some alternative ways like crowdfunding or other types of funding like carbon credits, as mentioned, which is my topic, of course. So basically, I guess there's also a big part to think of, going back to the basics and also thinking of the funding and the education. I mean, this is also the part, I mean, education is also sometimes lacking in some certain areas in emerging market, and technology can support that to share the information and the knowledge. Yes.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you. Food security also a major problem right now in emerging economy. Food price actually going up and up. It's become very problem, especially for the grassroots level people. World Talent Economy Forum, you know that we are working with many grassroots level people for around Asia Pacific. So if you have any better solution, we are open for that. We have millions of people who actually getting support by the World Talent Economy Forum. Day after tomorrow, we are collaborating with one of the largest South Asian business incubation, CHUET, Chittagong Engineering University. So hopefully with our collaborations and partnership, we can bring more prosper and more opportunity for the people. Thank you. Thank you for your join, and thank you for all of your advice. Professor David Smith,
I would just say
what do
bye
you,
because I need to go. Yes.
bye-bye, bye. Professor David Smith, what you want to discuss about this topic and what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, Sharif, thank you so much for letting me be part of today's program. It is a very important one because we have to meet that 70% increase in output of crops and food to meet the growing population demands. And, we're seeing it used in many different areas. We're seeing increased use of the smarter technologies, not just in crops and things, but also in livestock and livestock monitoring, and how we can do that, how we can decrease labor dependencies, how can we expedite the health of the animals with diagnosis and treatment, and look at how to detect contaminants and things earlier and raise the productivity. And how can we automate things? And as was said in the comments, with vertical farming, greenhouse farming, how can we maintain using Internet of Things sensors and real-time information to control lighting, temperature, soil conditions, humidity, many of the other things? And how can we manage the crops across all of these? And have it happen. And the use of drones will be big as more and more capabilities come in, as we begin to see software systems and platforms being put in place that can integrate all of this agricultural farming data together. How can we see it with surveillance? Can we use it to spray things on the crops? Can we monitor the crops? Can we monitor the livestock? Can we fight pests? Can we increase the security of the farm, the security of the others? Uh, how can we begin to use this real-time data, such as the moisture level, soil quality, water conditions, rain, and others, to put a plan in place for not only planting the plants, growing the plants, but harvesting the plants as well? And how can we use these tools to help us determine what is the best use of the soil and how those can be used, and how do we optimize the amounts of things such as the water, different types of fertilizers, different type of natural and man-made ways to control the insects and others. Uh, and how can we take it to help the farmer make important decisions? But the goal of all of this is to have an end-to-end smart farm, smart agriculture management system, and to go into the marketplace in a way. For example, the smart agricultural market revenue in 2024 is predicted to be almost $26 billion. And it's growing over 12% a year. So we're seeing the smart farming as a viable marketplace that can grow and be used in many, many different ways. And Sharif, my comment to kind of wrap up on this is that as we can see with the growth of it, from how do I decide what to plant, what to do with my animals, how can I go and get my soil ready, how can I plant, how can I optimize what I'm growing, how can I harvest them, how can I get those to market, how can I price them going to market, how can I maintain the security of not only my digital assets, but my physical assets well, of the farm and the animals, using advanced technology, even smart tagging for both crops and animals is something that we're seeing today. How can I use drones? How can I use image recognition? How can I use thermal? How can I use satellite capabilities to increase my farming output and efficiency? Well, a lot of new systems are going to have to be created to do all of this. A lot of new applications, a lot of tying all those applications together in systems. Again, that's where the science, the research, the entrepreneurship, incubators are having to be put in place. For example, here in Austin, one of our incubators is a smart farming incubator. And even though Austin is a tech center with semiconductors, Tesla, automobile, space companies, and things here, there's place for a smart agricultural incubator, even in a tech hub like Austin is. So it's something that we need to do globally, Sharif. It's one where entrepreneurship, particularly in the developing nations, can have a huge impact. And so, Sharif, thank you for letting me be part of discussing this very important topic today.
Sharif might be frozen there. Up in there. He's back. Well, I could jump in if with a conclusion.
Go ahead.
You know, there's are not many things that we're doing the same way that we were doing back in the 1850s, but agriculture is pretty much one of them. You know, it's find a piece of land and grow one crop in straight rows, put a lot of water in it, don't care about how fast the water evaporates. But look what happens. You've got a land intensive, water intensive, vulnerable food generating system that because it's a monocrop, it's not going to have good resistance to disease. Look at the potato blight that wiped out the kind of potato we're growing in the mid 19th century. So if there's something that's ripe for updating and updating with technology, it is our food production system. Now, we know that soybean cell has phosphorus in it. And we also know that there's a limited supply of the phosphorus resource on Earth. They actually harvest bones from battlefields and grind them up to make phosphorus. Then they discovered bird poop on the islands off of Peru, I believe. And now there's some land-based sources, but they're in Morocco, and I think Western Sahara. Anyway, it's a region you wouldn't want to go to. Very region. So we're really if we don't update our practices with closing the loop on this critical element, phosphorus, we have about an 80-year window to figure this out. A lot of it is running off into the water, coastal waters, and creating dead zones along with big nitrogen runoff. But we produce phosphorus. We could do simple things like capturing the humanure products. The number one to be poured on leaves, and that's a great compost start. And you can refine it. As far as my friend moved out to a wild part of Tehachapi, and they didn't have a sewer system, so he started just mixing his number 2 with sawdust, and it's amazing how quickly it breaks down into very usable, healthy soil. Now, the soil is a huge problem because we've been depleting it, we've been adulterating it with things like glyphosate. So the food, if you want to grow food, you got to grow the soil, and the soil, just a teaspoon of soil has trillions of microbial diverse life, and we're just finding out the amazing life that goes on soil with communication and fungal networks. So we really got a challenge to rejuvenate the soil all around the world, and I think this can be a kind of worldwide citizen science survey activity to see what the state of the soil is. You can do it just by burying some 100% cotton underwear and seeing after 60 days how eaten away it is. That tells you whether the soil is alive or dead. It's a very kind of fun, kind of little contest, citizen science thing to do. So we need to close the loop of these things. Sustainability is not good enough. We need regeneration. I like Kev Polk's plan, Eddenicity.com, where we have wild zones surrounding very concentrated car-free cities that are doing things like harvesting all the rain and all the sunlight that falls on them. And Kev Polk used to be a permaculture advocate, but he realized the small, slow solutions were not going to cut it for our cut status. We're right now using 4 times the planet resources. We would need 4 planets of our current lifestyle. So that's what's called planetary overshoot. So yeah, the clock is definitely ticking on addressing these problems, and I'm going to give my throat a rest. But thanks for the opportunity to participate today.
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. I know you are sick, but thank you for joining. Thank you for your commitment. We respect for your commitment. Thank you, Mr. Eric. What's your conclusion?
Well, I come from what has been an agricultural powerhouse, and a lot of that has been converted to housing, things that make more money, and a lot of people are trying to recover that agricultural power, and a lot of organizations and companies and governments are working together to do that. And we mentioned some of those things for that. In developing countries, though, there's a lot you can go on without the heavy investment. The first, I think, that's good in both places, precision agriculture. The idea of watering and planting and doing the exact right thing at the right time. A lot of that is done with sensors and data. Everything from the more affordable use of satellite data now to sensors and drones and water measures and everything. So precision agriculture is a way to do things better. Mobile technology really has a way of making that information usable. So the idea of using mobile information to give people just the information they need at the right time, distribution of that, is pretty powerful. Also, supply chain and logistics, how you put everything, we think fork to table and working even internationally. How do you make all those things work together, right? I think there's a lot of room in the supply chain and logistics. And then I mentioned some interesting ways to look at finance. I think the finance in agriculture, there's a lot that can be done there. Those are just some of the ways that we can do. So the operations itself is something that people can get in without huge technology investments in there. So, but yeah, there's a long way we can go with food, and there's a lot of effort to try and bring the food back to cities, because as you get cities grow, both the supply chain and, as Daniel put out, the waste chain grows tremendously when you have an unplanned growth in an area. And the idea of moving some of that back to remove those supply chain issues and some waste chain issues right into the cities themselves, there's a lot going on that. So exciting time to be thinking about agriculture.
Thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. I request all of our audience please share our content with the government agency, corporation and academy. World Talent Economy Forum is one of the fastest growing think tank. We are collaborating with the largest university, business incubations, corporations, government agencies around Asia Pacific. Hopefully your contribution will change millions of people's life and you will be part of the history. Thank you, bye-bye and take care.